Okay, good morning everyone. Good morning. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with the Melco's Application Team, and today we're going to be going over how to split elements up. It's really easy to do, and a lot of people get overwhelmed by splitting things or trying to work with different files, so they'll start just getting frustrated with it. And there's really no reason to be upset or get frustrated with it because it's so simple. So I'm going to go through quite a few different ways that we can do this to go over just different types of splitting that is possible. Let me just make sure the audio is going through. It is. Okay, great. So I've got these two examples, which we're going to do both of them. You have the starting files. They install with DesignShop. So when you go to your C drive, Designs, you'll find this one is Anchor and this one's Clover. And what we're going to do is kind of split it apart so that we can have room to put a monogram or a name or something like that in there. Some of the tools that we'll be looking at are here. So I'm going to show you how to use this combine and subtract elements. It's really easy. It's a fast way to be able to do things, and it can help you get through kind of removing sections quickly or adding sections. We'll also do some flipping, mirroring and flipping. If you've never used those, you should, because it's the fastest way to do a 180-degree turn within the software. You would click these two buttons, one then the other. There's different toolbars. I'll show you how to use the auto shape. We'll do the slow redraw, and then how to split elements and also change an element type. So those are just some of the tools from the toolbar to give you an idea of where we're going. So let's start off by looking at DesignShop. And I'm going to start, before we get into the anchor, I'm going to start by, let's look at the auto shape. So let's say with the holidays coming up, you want to draw a bunny. All right. So rather than having to go find one, it's really easy to do if we did just a traditional complex fill. So that's your fill tool right here. Now, anytime you select these, you have different ways that you can draw shapes. So if you just go with the default, you'll be able to click around on the screen, which is not exactly a nice way to draw a bunny, right? So that's one way. Or down here, you'll see there's some automatic shapes. So when I click on that, if I click on the automatic circle, that allows me to choose 2 points, and when I drag, it'll make a circle. Now, or an oval, as you see here. Well, if you want it to be a circle, if you hold the Shift key down, that'll lock your X and Y so that it's a perfect circle. So when you click, you're left with a solid fill. The dotted line, if you don't remember what that is, that's your stitch direction. So I always like to change it to something else other than horizontal. It's a personal preference. Okay, so once you've got that, now we've got to put ears on our bunny, right? So again, I'm going to do another input here. Good morning, everyone. And on our fill, I'll again choose the circle. And this time, I'm just going to draw the ears up here. So select 2 points, and all right, so I have one ear. And let's say I want to position it there. All right, so now we have 2 separate elements. Eventually, we're going to want this to all be one. So I'm going to copy and paste that. So you can copy, and then Control V is paste. And then down here, because bunnies are symmetric, right, I'd want it to be flipped the other way. And now I can move this over and position it wherever I want. So to keep it horizontal in line with the other one, I held the alternate key down as I moved it. So I hold alternate, left click and drag, and that'll move it over. All right, so we're getting there. We have 3 elements, so let's combine them now. So when you're combining or subtracting elements, notice those two items that we had before are only visible once you select multiple things. So if I choose 2 things here, notice my toolbar has now changed. I've got these alignment keys up here. I also have combine elements and subtract elements. So I'm going to select all of them. So to do that, I held one, I clicked on it, left click, hold the Control key down, left click on another, left click there. And that's all while holding Control. Another faster way, since it's all one color anyway, I can just select it over here. Gets you the same thing, so there's a whole bunch of ways to do the exact same thing within DesignShop. So from here, we're going to combine our shapes by saying Combine Element. So now you'll see we have a single bunny. All right, so let's say not only do we want that, but we want a border on it. So to add a border, right here you have change element from one type to another. So when you click on that, you'll see that you've got a bunch of different options here. Now, the single line center is a constant width column, right? So it's a satin stitch that you set how wide it's going to be. So anytime you do this, you have to select your shape first. So I'm going to go from a complex fill to single line center. And I don't want to get rid of my fill, I just want to replace does what I just did there. So instead of that, let's again say single line center, add. All right, and that's a pretty thin line, so let's make it a little bit bigger by changing the width right here. Okay, so now let's say we want to put a monogram in it. All right, so I can come over here and SMT, let's make a monogram, give it a different color, and go change its font to maybe the circle monogram. Yeah, let's do that one. Okay, that's tiny. Let's make it bigger. All right, so let's say we want that here, but we do not want it right there. Okay, so let's say we don't want to have it where it's on top of fill. All right, the general size is okay, we're happy like that, but we want to cut out the fill under there. So this is where we get into modifying our shapes to either cut out holes or split them entirely. So let's start by cutting a hole out of this one. So one way we can do that is anytime you want to edit your shape, select it first, and then right here you'll see there's an insert hole. So remember, you always have these automatic shapes. So I can come down and say insert hole, I want it to be a circle. So click on the circle tool. Now I can select my 2 points, hold my shift key to get a perfect circle, and it will remove the circle from there for me. If you didn't position it quite right like I did here, you can always move it around by selecting the shape and then left clicking on the hole and then moving the hole around. All right, well, it'd kind of be nice to have a border on the inside of this too. So again, I can say change element type, single line center, add. You'll notice it added the bunny ears back, the outside, so I'm going to delete that one and just change this over to 40. There. Okay, so that removed the center fill. Now, when that's one way we can do that. Another is, let's go look at our anchor. Okay, so when we have this anchor here, let's say what we want to do is to put a name across here. Okay, so all I did is choose a font and type some text. All right, so let's say we want to do that. Now, first off, where did I get this anchor file from? If you go to the C drive, so go to C, Designs, and type in anchor, it's the anchor.ofm. Okay, you guys all have that as well. All right, so just don't get overwhelmed with it. Just start working through it methodically of how are we going to get this to remove what's underneath it. So just so I can visualize it a little bit better, I like doing this. It's not necessary, so you don't have to do this. It's just I find it a little easier to visualize what I need to remove by using this vector item right here. Okay, so I'm going to hold the complex fill down, go to this last icon, which is in select a vector fill input mode, and this time I'm going to use a rectangle. Okay, so I only have to click and drag. So when I click and drag, all I'm doing is drawing a box approximately the size of what I want subtracted, so what I want removed from my anchor. Okay, and this will make a little bit more sense in a moment. It's just to give me placements of where I need to remove items. So from here, now we just kind of work through it. I'm going to turn off the text because now I've got this vector here showing me where we need to delete things. So let's start with the fill and learn how to subtract some elements. Anytime you want to use the subtract element tool, you always have to start with what you're trying to remove stitches from. Okay, so if I select this fill, that's what I'm trying to remove the stitches. What stitches am I trying to get rid of? The ones that overlap this blue box. All right, so I click on the fill. Now I'm going to hold my control key down. Always select what you want to remove from first, and then what you're going to subtract out. So I clicked on the vector fill, and right here you'll see it says subtract elements. Okay, now that both are selected, I can click on that, and now you'll see all that fill is gone. So now I have an element up top and the element below. If I zoom out so you can see it all, again, there's the top, there's the bottom, and that was one element. All right, so we removed part of it. I'm going to turn off the eyeball on the rope right now, so we're just working on the anchor. Okay, and we'll come back to the rope. These things here, if you're not familiar with those little lines, that's related to the trims. So one thing you can do up front, if you'd like, is select the entire design, right click, go to properties, and change your tie in and tie off. Turn on the auto trim, and I like turning those on. Okay, so that will get rid of all those kind of jump stitches that it was leaving, you know, not trimming between the elements. All right, so let's zoom back in on this area here and see what can we do to start splitting the rest of this. So I usually just click on something, and whatever's selected, that's now what I'm going to work on. All right, so that's different. Didn't do it. There they are. Okay. Oops. Helps if I don't click, if I actually click before. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to add a point along here. So to do that, all I did was select the element and add a point right where it intersects that blue line. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. All right. So once you've added that, I can you only need to, because this is a column, you only have to select one end of it right here. And now I'm going to come over here and say split element at selected points. Okay. When you do that, now I've got a top and a bottom. I'm going to do the same thing up here with that line I just drew. I'm going to, again, select that point, say split element at selected point. And now you'll see we've got a top, a middle, and a bottom. So all we have to do is delete out that middle section. So same with this guy here. Again, I'm going to add a point where it intersects my little vector box and say split element. Add a point down here and say split element. Okay, so from there I can hit delete. So we've almost got the anchor cleared out. So all that's left is all this manual underlay that was done. So again, you can select a point, and this tool works anywhere. So if you select a point, say split element, it'll break it there. And again, I'm going to break that one, and I can delete that line. So literally all I'm doing is going through and just selecting the different points, and whenever I find a line, this one's easy because that's the starting point, I can just delete the extra points. But if it's in the middle of a line like this, I can say split element at selected point, again here, split element, and then delete that segment that's left in the middle. Okay, this one again is easy because it's the starting point, so I can select the end points and just select and delete those. Okay, so we pretty quickly removed all that part of the anchor. Well, with the rope, if I go turn that one on now, and let's turn off the name for the moment. Again, we have the same thing. I like to just be methodical about it and select anything that I can select by dragging a box around it and hit the delete key. When you draw the box, it will not select anything unless it's fully encapsulated by the box you drew. So that's why you'll see the endpoints still have things, because the entire element that formed that was not selected. Okay, so I just hit the delete key. And from here now it becomes an editing exercise, which again is not hard. You just kind of click your way through it, separating elements as needed so that you can delete the shape. Okay, so again here I'm selecting the points where I want to cut it. So that's where I want to cut this element, and I space split element. So now if I zoom back out, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Down here, click a point where it intersects the blue, split element. All right, so you just go through it, delete this element, I already split, so we can just hit delete. Now what about these ends? They're wireframes as well, so they're pretty straightforward to fix. We can go through and split the element up and change some of the stitch directions. So let's say we want to split this one here. Say split element. Now I can delete the bottom half of that. And then this one I'm going to split here. Again, close to that blue line. Why I'm not worrying about it being exactly the blue line, because I'm going to put a satin stitch over it and show you how to do that. So there's no reason for it to be, oops, I didn't want to print screen. I went to delete point. There we go. Okay. So there's no reason for it to have to be exact when I'm going to put a satin stitch over that edge. That will give us a little bit of overlap. And literally I'm just selecting things and deleting the points. On this guy here, I'm going to split element here by saying split element as selected points and delete. All right, so that cleaned up this side. Oh, down here there's a little bit less overlapping, so that one's going to be quicker. Just select the point and say split element at selected points and delete. There. So, you know, in just a few minutes we've split that up. So to clean up these edges, all we have to do is add a satin line, single line satin, or single line center. There we go. And so to do that, I'm going to just click on here, hold my alternate key down to get it to be perfectly horizontal, left click across, hit enter, and enter again to accept the default width. The default width is right here. So I can change that to 40 or something bigger if I want it a little bit wider. Let's do 30. There. Okay. And let's do the same thing on the bottom. Rather than copying and pasting it, well, rather than drawing it again, let's copy and paste. So Control C, Control V, and now I can hold my alternate key down, left click on it, and just drag it down to go down here. Okay. There. So if I turn on the grid, or the origin right there, I can also center this up a little bit better by lining it up directly with there. Okay, so really the way to go through subtracting things out of here is just to work through it one step at a time. Click on something, delete the section you don't want. Click on the next thing, delete the section you don't want. And just keep working through it until you're done. So any questions so far that I haven't seen? I don't think so. All right. So let's look at another example. All right, so let's say this clover. All right, so let's say we want to take this clover and we want them to be 4 inches. So all I did was select it and click on 4 down here. All right, and let's say I want to put a larger name. Actually, instead of doing it this way, let's do it with a vector. So I'm going to draw a vector. Oops. As a rectangle. Let's say we want to put a name across there about that size. Okay, that's 1.25 tall. Okay, numlock is not working. There we go. All right, so let's say we want it about there. All right, so again, what do? How do we split this up? We just work through it. So I'm going to click on the first thing, and this time, rather than doing subtract elements, so actually, I'm going to do it with subtract elements, then I'm going to undo it and show you a different way. So you can see there's multiple ways to do this exact same thing. So if I select the shape, because that's what I want to remove stitches from, hold my Control key down, and then click on the vector. Now I can say subtract elements. And all the stitches that are overlapping with that vector are now gone. All right, so that's one way. If I undo that, let me show you a different way. I can come over here and do what we just did before. Add a point on each side of this. Now if I select both of those points by holding the Control key, now down here I can say split element at selected points. That leaves me with a top and a bottom. Well, again, I'm going to have to do that same thing down here. 2 points, hold the Control key to select them both, and again say split element at selected point. Now I have the center that I can delete. So you can see by using that subtract elements, it's a faster operation and you don't have to eyeball where it intersects. So again, to do subtract, select the shape, hold the control key, click on the vector. Then up here, subtract elements. That leaves just the top. Again, select the shape, select the vector, subtract elements. Okay, really quick. All right, so that was there. Now what about this? This is a column. You can tell that, it says it over here. This one we have to do a little bit more work on because it keeps on intersecting this line a bunch. We want stuff that's outside of the blue box, right? So here we've got to kind of work our way around splitting the element. So I select one side and I say split element. I'm going to come over here, add a point, and again say split element. So now I've got this in the middle. So now I can just hit the delete key on that. And again, just work your way around there, splitting your shape. Hey everyone, right here, and I'm going to again move this point up and split. It's using this icon, and now delete that one. So it's just looking at, all I'm doing is clicking on what I want to delete and splitting the shape and then deleting the, oops, I did not want to delete that yet because I need that top portion. So split element, now I can delete it. Okay, so I'm going to quick finish clicking around here, adding my points, splitting my shape, deleting the stuff that's intersecting my box, split there, and another one here, split there. I'm going to delete that one. All right, now what about this mess in here? All right, so first off, what is it? Well, to figure it out, you can either look at your view over here, you can do a redraw to see what it's doing, and you can see it's just running stitches. Okay, so I'm going to delete all that. All right, so for the moment, I'm going to delete all those running stitches, just select them and hit delete. And I'll show you what we're going to do instead. Okay, so all these random running stitches that we don't need, we're going to go delete. Okay, so deleted our running stitches. Now we have these jump stitches, and if you don't remember, those jump stitches are things under properties. Okay, so under your tie in and tie off, if you go make sure you have knots on, and I usually, it's a personal preference, software default's 64, I prefer a 20 to 30 point, somewhere in there. Okay, and that will go ahead and insert trims whenever they're needed, okay, to get rid of those jumps. So for here, now we have the bulk of the work done. We have all our elements. It's not necessarily optimized yet for sewing, but that's something we can work through. So now we can add our single line center, which is that icon up there. Hold my alternate key down to get the line nice and straight. Let's make it a beefier line than that. Okay, so I've got that. I can copy and paste it, left click, and drag it down. Okay, so we split the design up. Now what? Well, I always like to, with these sorts of designs, all that green is touching, right? And because it's touching, there's no reason we can't sew this entire top thing without a trim, and the same thing with the bottom, the entire bottom without a trim. So that's just a matter of going through your digitizing and double checking how you have it positioned here. I'm going to delete that. I don't want a manual stitch. Okay, so now I'm left with just my main elements here. All right, so let's start with doing the bottom first, since that just happens to be what's up top. So if I sew this first, it's got to start. Let's update trims. So right now we have trims everywhere, which is what we're trying to get rid of. So let's say we start that one here, stop there. So if it sews that first, this is just a puzzle. To me, it's fun. How do we want to put this together to minimize trims? So if we sew this one first, well, I could probably go ahead and do the border on that. So let's move the border. If I select the border, it will highlight it over here. So if you're not sure where it is in the list, don't worry. Just click on it on the screen, and it will highlight it here. And I know I want that one second. Okay, so now I can change my start and stop. So it does this one, then it does the border. Now we want all of these other elements to go below this line, so we need to get there. If I select that, I can move it up. And this is all just solving the puzzle to get from one spot to another, paying attention to your starts and stops to minimize the trims. So here, I've got a start, stop. That one, the start is where the propeller is, stop there. Now I need to get over here. Okay, so to do that, I can add a walk input, going from the propeller to where my next element starts. So it's going to do this one, and it will start there, do a running stitch over to do this guy. Starts and stops there. Again, we can do another running stitch just to travel over to the next spot we need to sew. Well, the next thing we want to sew is going to be this fill. So drag that up, move the start and stop, and a quick way to move the start and stop is just to click on this button right here. The first click is the start point, the second click is the end point. So let's start and end there. The border for that is this one. We'll move it up, and again, tell it to start where the propeller is, end on the other side, so it'll just sew around. And then the very last thing to avoid a trim here is to move this guy up. And let's move its start to where the propeller is and make it end on one of the ends. All right, so that bottom half is done. It's rearranged. We added some running stitches so that it should sew continuously. If you think you've done it right, well, check your work. The easiest way to check your work is right here where it says Update Auto Tie Trims. Notice down here you'll see there's trims. All right. What you want is when you update that, so my starts and stops aren't close enough because of how my settings. So that just means I need to either go zoom in so I can actually move my starts and stops closer. And that way you'll end up with this being continuously sewn, or change your settings. That's the other way, where you go change that the tie-ins to something bigger than that, because it just says my points are more than 20 points from one another. All right, so that's the bottom. Now top, you would do the same thing. So you can see it's pretty simple to work your way through it so that it ends up being split. Now you can add a name on there, whatever you want to do. Okay, so do we have any questions? It's pretty straightforward to do. Are there printable directions on how to do this? I did send the guys over at Melco this PDF file, which shows what the icons look like. Okay, you can also find them in your manual. So if you're not familiar with your manual, how you can get to it, there's, again, multiple ways, but here's one. You can click on the question mark, and there's your actual manual. So I think if you just do like a Control F and say combine, and there it is. There's how you would combine elements. There's how you would subtract elements. So it's also available in the manual for you to be able to check. All right. The biggest thing with subtracting elements is make sure, it never fails. I'll try to do it, and I'll end up saying, okay, I want to take this. All right, so let's say I have these two, and they are both fills, complex fills. Okay. Oh, that's nice. So if I've got my fill, and now I want to take another one, have it overlapping, you need to, if you're trying to subtract them, you select whatever you're trying to remove stitches from first. Okay, it never fails. Always select the wrong one, particularly when I have a shape overlapping it. Let's say I have a circle or something on there, and what I want to do is remove, I don't want two fills stacked on top of one another. I want to remove that, so it's kind of got a void underneath it. Well, it never fails. I'll select this one and then the one underneath it, and it won't work. So I want to remove stitches from that. I want to take that shape out, say subtract elements, and that leaves me with my top shape with the hole in it. And then I've got the one. Now notice it is line to line. So, you know, if you're doing things like this, I prefer a little bit of overlap. So ways you can do overlap. If you know how much you want, you can come over and select the hole that's in the fill and say Object, Offset Outline, and we want it to, let's say 7 points. And now it's 7 points in, so we have a 7-point overlap. You can also do that with pole compensation, but I just prefer designing in small amounts of overlap. It's personal preference. So, all right. Now, when you want to combine your elements again, it's very simple. Select your shapes just by holding your Control key, and up here, combine elements. And now it's one shape instead of 2 overlapping fills. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful. Are there any questions that I missed? Let's see. You're funny. I don't see any up here. So don't be overwhelmed by it. Every time you work in DesignShop or work on a project at all, it's a learning opportunity, right? So you'll find things that were really hard for you today are easy tomorrow and things like that. So the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I know some people will watch me click around and go, goodness, how'd you do that? The more you do it, the easier it is, really. And you can let the tool work for you and make it easier for yourself by getting familiar with some of these kind of tools that are buried, right? Splitting elements. If I want to split this back up, select the points, split it. If I was not able to split it, how would I do that? Well, one way I could do is copy and paste. Okay, so now I have 2. Well, now I can go and select all my points that I want to get rid of. Oops, I missed one. And hit the delete key. And again, over here, select the points, hit the delete key. All right, well, that got me the same thing. It was just more work, right? Now I've got this top shape. Well, for the bottom shape, I'd have to delete the points up here. So again, I can come select my points and hit delete. And now I've got a bottom. See that? So you can do it other ways. It's just a lot faster if you use some of these, what I like to think of as productivity enhancements. You just make life easier. All right. Well, I hope these were helpful for you. Type in any comment. If you have any questions, you can type them in, and we'll try to answer them throughout the day. And hopefully, oh, so the redraw button, I did see a question there. So the redraw is right here. Begin slow redraw. And what you'll notice here is as it's redrawing, you can fast forward through it using these little buttons, and it will kind of run through it a little bit faster. You can make it so faster by increasing this number. It'll make it redraw faster. If you want it to go slower so you can really study how it's sewing, you would decrease this number to a snail's pace. One thing real quick, if you didn't notice, I like using the redraw to double check that I did things right. Right off the bat, I can tell you this is not done right. This little design here, there's no underlay, right? So you can fix that easily by noticing it first, by doing that redraw, and then coming over here and turning on a fill underlay. Or better yet, I can come over into the properties and turn on auto underlay. And that way, based on the appropriate size that it is, it will put in appropriate underlay for me. So you can see now it's doing a nice little crosshatch underlay. That will sew much better. Okay. And I would also change that, but anyway. Redraw is helpful for troubleshooting designs and going through them and making sure that you've done what you thought you were, how you want it to sew out. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any others. Okay. Well, you guys have a great afternoon. Again, my name is Samantha Mirabal. It's with the Applications Team, and we will be back next week. I believe the topic is embroidering thick or heavy things, so like karate belts, collars, things like that, and the different techniques you can use. So if you've got any suggestions, be sure to type them in. We'll add them to the list for the different videos. All right, you guys have a great afternoon. Bye.